actually a really interesting view. Do you want us to do it right now? Sure. Let's complete the circuit. And I'm also the health inspector's daughter, so after we all Yes.
Yeah, you guys are part of our ticket. Yes, let's see what happens.
So did everybody That was just it's a nice experiment, especially for younger kids. It's a nice experiment to show you what conducting means, how well metal conducts. We tried a pen back here, how poorly plastic conducts, and because we are mostly made of water, we actually conduct fairly well. Now this gentleman is going to help me figure out how to do these in series and parallel. And to me, that's a lot of the power of a project. And one of the things I want to talk about today is how powerful projects have been in my schooling and in something that we call at Qualcomm the Think Bit Lab. So I told you about the zombie creation and such. So at Qualcomm, I have been in engineering with background in computer science for the bulk of that 22 years. First, I led the software group that puts the software on the chipsets that goes in all the Apple's phones and Samsung's phones and all the folks in China and Korea and the U.S. who make phones. And most recently, I headed up the group of engineers, 1,400 people worldwide, that integrates our products into these customer phones. So it's been a fabulous ride in engineering. And about 9 months ago, I moved, because my husband was working in Washington, D.C., I moved to our government affairs group. And now I get involved with the product background and the engineering background. I get involved in things like what I call the scary China policies for security controllable, things that have government, international, and U.S. government policies that affect our products and our business. And so it's like having a whole new career. One thing I'd like to mention is the teacher connection. So what's Susie's connection to teachers? I am not an educator, not a teacher, but I am a product of people like you folks, math and science teachers, any sort of teachers. I grew up in a small town up in the Sierras. We had very involved and dedicated teachers. We did all kinds of interesting science fair projects. I'm a health inspector's daughter, so of course the health inspector's daughter has to do, for her first grade science fair project, you have to do a septic system. So you can ask me things about septic systems, I should know that. And then in third grade, I did probably the standard, does aspirin, salicylic acid, I think that's right, actually help, I couldn't pronounce it then. Does aspirin actually help bean plants grow better? And I actually took first prize in that competition, and I went to the regionals, and all the bean plants died over Easter break, and I still took third at that. Because science teachers like you folks actually taught me in the third grade, how to use the experiment, how to use the scientific method, and a lot of that grew into things like computational thinking and analytical thinking. So I just want to say, number one, thank you for listening to me here, and also thanks to CEE for inviting me here, because I think the thing I wanted to point out, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we call the Think of It Lab. As Dina said, she's got a long connection years ago to Erwin Jacobs. Erwin Jacobs, the first company before Qualcomm, was here in San Diego, and it was called Think of It. So Think of It is a play on Think of It. So about 3 years ago, in human resources, there was a lot of interest on the part of engineers in the company, on the part of their kids, to say, so what does mom or dad do at work? I'm sure any of you folks who are parents, or have been a child, have asked your parents the same thing, or been asked the same thing. And so HR started running with the engineers in the company some evenings where they would bring kids in and show kids, run little experiments, maybe like the human circuit, and show kids what their parents, frankly, one of the kids can see what their parents did at work. That grew into some work with the Veterans Administration for teaching classes on strengths and values and what Qualcomm engineers did and what different jobs in Qualcomm was. And that grew into, as the whole STEM education a few years ago started gaining a lot of momentum, and as it started getting harder and harder for Qualcomm to hire engineers, that grew into what we call STEM exposure. And that is this, right now it's, most of it is this one-day course that we teach to all the, I think some of you folks have sent your kids to the Think of It Lab, that we have middle school classes come in to Qualcomm. We have a room about twice the size, and it's got beanbag chairs, and it's all painted bright colors. And 6th grade and 7th graders and 8th graders learn how to program a little Arduino board. This guy's without a battery. They made this for me in my last talk. A little Arduino board in C that moves a servo or turns on an LED light. And so there's a lot of programming classes out there and for kids, I think. And the Think of It difference seems to be that it's very hands-on. And then they go to what we call the store, which is we're a big customer of a company called Radio Trading that has plastic stores and plush toys, glitter. You go into the Think of It Lab and you come out with a lot of glitter on. And the kids build, on the theme of the day, the kids build these little robots that we call robocrafts. This has been really, really successful in serving a lot of exposing a lot of kids, 6th graders, to programming. We're not really teaching them a deep course in programming, but what we're doing is exposing them to what you can do in STEM. And actually, as a part of the program, they come in, and as we say, how can a child aspire to a career he or she doesn't know exists? And the first part of the Think of It experience is going through what we call the world of work, where we have these cards that say technical writer. What can you do with a background in writing and technology? Become a technical writer, hardware engineer, user interface designer. We actually have pilots that are on the staff at Qualcomm, so pilot is one of those. I don't have it here. And so at the last part, they actually get up, and these are 6th graders, and a lot of them are coming from very underserved areas. Some of them have never been in an elevator. And it's not a competition. It's not like the first robotics, but they build these little robots, and then every team, they work in pairs. Every team gets up at the end of the day and presents their creation, what it is, and what it does to the rest of the class. And it's really fun. If you ever have a chance to, if you ever want to see it in action, we teach classes like 4 days a week, and show up around 1:30 in the afternoon and call me, and I'll make sure you can get in and actually see these kids presenting their projects. I think, again, this is meant to give kids exposure it's not giving a deep course in engineering or in computer science, but what we have found is the fact that kids really need to connect with a field. They really need to understand what they can do with it. And what we found is something as pragmatic and as hands-on as building little robots that wave their arms and wave their reading glasses around is really impactful. We're doing some longitudinal studies on some of these camps that we're holding. We also hold similar, we call them 2 camps. We hold similar camps for starting with 6th grade girls, and we're on a cohort of 6th grade girls who came back before they went to 7th grade, and this summer we'll be teaching them as they go into 8th grade. Same group of girls, and we're doing a longitudinal study in terms of how access they can do these classes make them to go into some of these fields going forward. So Qualcomm doesn't make any money out of this. It's philanthropic. It's hoping that in maybe 10 or 12, 10 years, maybe we can hire those people as engineers. But it's proved to be a really good way for the company we feel, to give back to the community. And what we want you to do is carry on that work, because we are technologists. We're not educators. And I think it's really important that the company and the corporate world and the government actually supports teachers in trying to build the workforce of tomorrow. The other thing that's happening, and some of you are probably very aware, is STEM diversity, STEM education is really becoming has become in the last probably 2 years a huge national priority. Now, and there's a lot of resources behind that. Now I know it probably takes a long time between when it becomes a priority and when schools actually see the programs and the money, and all you folks have full curriculum, teaching the curriculum that's dictated by the state and the federal curriculum. But I would just like to encourage you to realize how much impact involved and interested science teachers have on people like me, people like the kids that come to think better and carrying those projects forward, and we need you. The last thing I'll mention is, in the same vein as STEM as a national priority, there are a lot of companies, corporations like Qualcomm, who really want to connect with you folks, because you are the people who actually, again, we are technologists, we are not educators. You are the people who actually know what is impactful for your students, and there's a lot of companies like Qualcomm who really want that knowledge and really want to partner with you. We don't want to do these fun classes just because they're fun. We want to do them so they have some level of impact, and we want to, and like to think of it, what we want to do is we want to grow that impact, and so we need your involvement. And I think it's not just Qualcomm. I think, Raytheon has programs like this. Intel certainly throws a lot of money at things like this. So I would encourage you to see if you're interested in participating or giving us the corporate world your feedback in terms of how some of these programs should run and what kind of curriculum we should have. I would really encourage you to contact me. But there's companies who are very interested in this topic, STEM education and STEM diversity all over the nation, and they need your input. So with that, and after my blood pressure story, I think we're going to have to collaborate on some blood pressure experiment. I'm just going to open it up for questions, and Thank you for being here.